Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gathering of Gachas, the only podcast that focuses exclusively on the games your parents don't want you to play. I'm Galen, the sound guy Firestone.
I'm Ronicle.
And I'm Dez. Yo, everybody, what's up?
What is up?
A lot of things.
A lot of things. On the day of recording, today is election day here in the States.
Hooray!
Things are going on.
Yes, they are.
And in France, it's Wednesday, my dudes.
Oh, yeah, it is late as heck for you, isn't it? We better get started then.
That's true.
All right, well...
This is fine. I still have a fair amount of hours of attention ahead of me.
Well, let's...
So I will be fresh and ready to talk about all of our 5 with Gacha game.
Yep, and starting, as usual, with FFBE.
Let's do it.
FFBE with the Halloween celebration unit.
Yay! I've always liked the Halloween, time of the year in this game.
Yeah, they're allowing themselves to try a lot of things, some of which don't necessarily land, such as Godria. But there's plenty to like, even though I haven't got any single Halloween unit before that. This is not the case anymore. I'll return to that a little bit later, but for now, let's talk about the new and shiny things.
Okay.
And they got out the big guns with the newest NV-based unit, Ibara.
Yeah, my understanding is she is global exclusive and CG.
Yeah, she's New Vision, global exclusive, with a big fancy CG, and also she's good.
I like this combo. I'm happy with this.
Yeah, me too.
This mystical tree demon has a TMR that is probably one of the most basic mage TMRs you could make.
Okay.
60 magic, 5% regen MP per turn.
Yeah, that sums it up nicely. There's nothing really too weird about that.
Simple to me.
Yeah. STMR is a 180 magic throw-in weapon with 50% innate through dual wield.
Sure.
Yeah. The big prize as far as items go, however, is the vision card. Because we're looking for... A lot of people were looking forward to Sol coming out, because his vision card is very good for mages with 100 base magic and some good passive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ibara came 2 weeks before Sol. We know he's coming at this point in a couple of days. And she has a vision card with 110 base magic and 50% magic through double hand. And a 50% magic passive for female units.
That sounds pretty straightforward and pretty excellent.
A lot better for females, especially.
Indeed.
From understanding here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strong passives. Also, I just noticed this ancient mystical tree demon can wield guns for some reason. Because sometimes I guess you just have to.
I sometimes you just have to bust a cap, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there a good magic gun in the game? That feels weird.
There will be with Mage Physalis coming out eventually.
Okay. So that's just a very strange option, but forward-thinking.
Yeah. It's future-proofing and it's hilarious.
Fair enough.
Now then, as far as the unit herself goes, she has a main form that's mostly centered around lightning damage, with both Bolting Strike and Chaosware Awakened, and it's okay. It's fine. It has some very strong cooldowns, including one that integrates an 80% Spirit Break. And she has some killers for human and fairies, but it's fine. It's the kit of a good mage.
Okay.
Then you shift her to her Brave Shift form. And she becomes, on her main kit, mostly centered around dark damage, with similar effectiveness.
Makes sense for a demon.
And also her LB becomes a 2-hit enormous nuclear options that make her basically a magic Tifa.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And given that Tifa was so good, she was actually used on magic stages for Dark Visions as a physical unit with an innate 80% damage reduction and still was usable there. Having a magic option for something like that is very good.
I can see that being useful.
Yeah, in fact, there's been videos where basically somebody just took an Ibara around trails and just had her one-shot everything.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
So yeah, she's solid in that regard. Some just goes shift, boom, thank you for playing. You do need a little bit of support to make the most out of it.
Sure, I mean, that's usually the case. You usually have to have a support for most things to make the most out of it.
Going back a step, Geister in the chat says, good magical guns, Blue Storm from Four Winds Physalis.
Which I think is what Ranika was referring to.
Isn't that Tetra Physalis?
Yes, this one is good. And I was already thinking ahead to the new Vision Physalis that's coming out Evangelion, that also is going to be a gun mage.
Because I guess that's her thing now.
I guess. Well, I don't think she's a mage in her free duo unit with Charlotte.
It's hard to keep track. I gotta be honest.
Oh, yeah.
When they decide they like a character, there's usually like 16.
And I'm sparing you some details. Did you know in JP, single units can chain now? Like, with themselves?
What?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I don't have the brain power for this.
Okay, then let's move on to the other units that came on the Halloween banners. Well, not the new units, but the NV Awakenings.
I have complaints, gotta be honest.
Yeah, and I imagine one of these complaints is they gave NVA to the wrong demon.
I wouldn't have minded if it was both, but why only Lucius?
I don't know. I like to think that they might have dodged Lilith just for the sake of not having arena players scream in panic because she was already enough of a pain as she is.
That's no excuse. She's amazing as a tank. Give us an NVA tank. Give us that NVA tank. Why? Anyway, go on.
Okay, so we have Grimlord Sakura, which rides her staff like a witch on her NV, her Brave Shift, which is pretty nice.
Okay.
And she gains a lot. She gains abilities even on her brave base form, such as physical type magic attacks, including one with a bolting chain that also put Mirage on the whole team.
That's handy.
Yeah. She also has an ability that increases resistances to fire, lightning, light, and dark by 80%, 100% with a cooldown.
Okay, also very handy.
Yeah, because Sakura was always this mix of strong mage and strong utility.
Yeah,
and
she
I'm
was.
glad they thought about bringing both up to par.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Some fire chaining Cursor Awaken move. Even an alternate use for her Albi Crystal that includes a barrier a full party auto-revive, and a 50% general damage mitigation for 2 turns.
Nice.
So yeah, some strong utility that makes her pretty flexible, a solid choice overall. Oh yeah, and she also can imbue Thunder with Literal and Thunder.
Yeah, as magic, which is unusual, but I like it.
Me too. And then you can Brave Shift her, and at this point you have a stronger killer against Human, Demon, and Reaper.
Right.
And they are only on caster, but they are both physical and magical because of her physical type magic damage skill.
So
but that as a side effect means that it's better for Mastermind Zone too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Never forget about Mastermind Zone.
I mean, he's kind of impossible to forget. I think we talk about him pretty much every week.
Yeah. And she also
and he's been out a while.
Yeah.
And then she also gets skills like the ability to imbue an ally with Dark Element, for this little bit of utility as well. And Dark Chaining move, similar to the Fire Chaining move. This time they've actually separated the Fire Chain and the Dark Chain instead of having a chain that's both elements at the same time. Thank you very much.
I kind of thought that was cute, and they followed that up with the demons, and I thought that was also, like, in that realm I was kind of happy with, but I get why they want to go away from that for obvious reasons. Still, I did think it was funny.
It really makes sense to do it as part of the Brave Shift.
Yeah.
And of course the LB is actually big damage with also a big Dark Imperil. So yeah, she's just a solid mage option for fire and dark damage.
Sure seems that way.
And has this flexibility of having an option even if you're not using any of those 2 elements. And given that she has some ease to get her and to get a lot of her to compensate for the fact that she is a time-limited unit, it can be a strong option.
Yeah, but we know they made it a little easier for us to get time-limited units now, so we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
But before we do, let's move on to Demon Bro.
Demon Bro, Lucius, who in his Brave Shift goes full edge mode.
Yeah, I can see the sprite.
Lines and everything.
Gotta be honest, it honestly looks like this sprite was drawn by someone completely different from the original artist. Like, the art styles just do not look the same to me at all.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. Since I never was much of a Lucius fan in the first place, I just accept that he's kind of rare and that his role in his NV form shifts a little, but not in the best of way. Like, he still can do pretty good damage, but he also gain breaking moves.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, full 75% break for 3 turns as part of one of his chaining move. With Divine Ruination, though.
Yeah, he what was he on? He was on Kingsglaive. I remember that. I paired him with Nyx a lot because the game really liked giving me Nyx.
Oh. Well, I'd have liked to have some Nyx because he's got some nice utility.
Well, now it does. I don't see his Kingsglaive chains anymore. I think...
Yeah, I think they were awakened out of existence last year.
Well, that's a shame, but still, good for him.
Yeah.
He's Bolting Strike, DR, still got his big AR AoE, which the good pair with Lilith.
He gets Bolting Strike mostly in his Brave Shift form, with a Dark and a Fire chaining move, with HP sacrifice that he can use. And yeah, basically similar elements to Sakura, And some breaks that are 80% in his Brave Shift form.
Pretty nice. Not the best, but pretty nice.
Yeah. And he's a bit half and half. He wants to do damage and he wants to do break. And as a result, he doesn't excel in any of those roles.
That seems to be kind of a common theme if you're...
Yeah.
Doing a bunch of different things, it's usually you're not going to do any of them super well.
Yeah. It's balance.
It is.
Yeah, no, agreed.
I always appreciate it when we get a lot of slot utility, and as I said, I ran the demons a lot. So I was usually in a pretty good position to make use of, like, that slot utility they both had.
And so that kind of slot efficiency continues here. But aside from that, I don't think he has a lot for himself.
No, I'm looking over his skills. They seem usable, but nothing that jumps out.
Yeah, and like if you're going to use Divine Ruination, which is his best family, your partner choice are Tifa in another element, and that's pretty much it. Exactly.
Well, that is a shame.
But at least you won't have too much of a trouble getting him if you really want it, because they brought out the big guns for this banner, and that's a good way to make people actually pull for a banner that's mostly 5-star bases.
Yeah.
That don't have an NVA. Because there's always this worry with NV time-limited units, especially since we don't have the Shard Dungeon yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, they brought out the big gun. So, first things first, the banner, which is pretty much all of the Halloween exclusive units so far, except they didn't have Ibara as part of the banner at any increased rate, which makes sense because her separate banner is still up.
Right.
So, the 10 pool is a 4k lapis instead of 5k lapis. It gives you a coin every time you pull. 1 coin can be traded for a prism, 2 coins can be traded for a unit. So you have guarantees. And you also have a 35% to pull a unit. That's an on-banner rainbow.
That's really nice. 35% is no joke.
That is huge.
With
It really is.
Base 5s kind of being phased out in terms of importance, being able to play catch-up on older units like that is really, really good.
Yeah, and especially don't sleep off some of these TMRs, because some like Gadria's TMR or STMR are very solid still. You've got a lot of utility that can go around. Carton's TMR is almost as decent as Madame Idle's STMR.
Which is kind of gigantic. If a TMR is almost as good as an STMR, that's a power play right there. That's no joke.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, yeah, it's just your shard in rainbows and it feels awesome. And you can only pull on-banner rainbows, but you can pull NVs, and they can be of any of the NVs that came out so far. So you don't even have the, I don't know if you want to spend with it, because the units you want for the other off-banners are the NVs, and you're still going to get them.
Okay.
So if they can keep this way throughout the holiday banners and the likes, I think that's a very good plan.
I'm very inclined to agree with that.
Yeah, like, they've knocked it out of the park. It's an awesome way to release all of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an easy task to find the right balance, but it's just is some stuff. Some of it is kind of old, but you get so much of it that you're like, okay, I'll take these TMRs. Sure, I'll take a Demon Rain.
Yeah, I mean, even then, Demon Rain's TMR was, for a very long time, exceptional. Like, that was...
Yeah.
And when he first came out, that was among the best offensive TMRs.
Yeah.
Did I ever get Demon Rain? No, it was Draco Laswell who liked me. I didn't really like him that much, but he liked me a lot.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I remember that. I never got a Demon Rain either.
I never had any single Halloween units, and I pulled just a little. I used the tickets. In fact, there was a problem where the tickets had to be disabled temporarily.
What happened there?
Because the 4-star tickets only gave 10% rainbow rates instead of the 35%.
Oof.
The most fun part is that there are 10% rainbows and 30% rainbows tickets that are worse than regular tickets on this banner specifically.
That's...
Wow.
Huh.
Don't
Okay.
use your 30% or 10% rainbow tickets, folks.
Yeah, not on this banner anyway.
Not on
this
this
banner
banner.
is still up.
That actually rates you down, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I keep telling
seems
people,
odd.
just spend your tickets. That's what they're there for. Don't hoard them forever, because otherwise you end up with a situation like this, where the tickets themselves have been power crept, which is real odd.
Now you put it like that, yeah.
Power creeping tickets. Who would have thought?
I mean, especially if you take into account the EX tickets that now also have the EX NV tickets,
Oh,
which are
goodness.
exactly the same, except they have this 1.35% chance to drop an NV.
Hoo boy.
Speaking of which, I did make one 4,000 lapis pool and got 2 NVs out of it, which is awesome. Except it's my, both Iris was nice because that's her SCMR,
Yeah.
and 5th Cloud. Because apparently the only NV units I can pull ever are Cloud, Iris, and Rain.
Well, FF7 likes you. Did you play Remake?
No, I can't. I don't have a PS4.
Oh. Huh. That's a shame.
Well, don't worry, Rena. I didn't play the remake either, for the same reason. So
Alright.
It is coming to PC eventually.
I assume it is.
I mean, they said it is.
What I hope for.
They flat out said it's coming to Steam at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I assume it is.
Yep.
In other smaller news regarding NV units, we're also having a daily bonus, which grants some tickets on the usual worlds, but also some coins. Coins that you can trade in for shards.
Ooh.
Any NV units. And you get enough of it to basically be able to NV EX+1 any of the NV units you might have pulled just a single one and couldn't really use to its fullest potential. And they give you can trade in the shards for both the NV based unit and the NV awakened ones. And it's still not the shard dungeon. Get us the shard dungeon. We know it's coming now. I think it's been confirmed in a Q&A.
I mean,
It's okay. We can take it. We can take the shard dungeon. It's fine. Just give it to us.
my only thought on
I
that
think Rena
is that
wants the shard dungeon.
just the way coding works, they're probably trying not to break something else. It's always a risk when you deploy stuff early.
I don't even think it's early. At this point, I think it's late.
Never mind then. Yeah, shard dungeon, please.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's the case.
We'll have to double check on that for we'll have to double check on that for next episode.
Indeed. And thank you, guys. I did try to make it a seductive plea for the chat dungeon, if only to give a bit of difference from the usual anger-fueled plea of "Why haven't you done that already, you incompetent hacks?"
It's a nice change of pace, I gotta say. It's an impressive change of pace. I appreciate it.
Now, with the Halloween event, they've not even just given us some units, there was also event bits, which were pretty fun too. Where Ibara's story was playable as a bit of an event with some rivalry with an Onyoji.
Okay.
And the return of the Grave Hexvius boss battle, which was hilarious, if only because of the solid name in the pan.
Uh-oh.
Grave Hexvius.
Oh.
I like it.
Oh, God.
We knew Galen was going to love that one.
Oh yeah, and there was an interesting quirk regarding the Ibara story event.
Okay.
So there were battle stages and story stages in between. And the story stages, of course, don't cost stamina. But they did reward you with EP points.
Oh dear.
For the progressive rewards. So you could just play the story stage, skip it, get 400 EP points, and repeat until you got every single last rewards in that tracker without spending a single point of stamina.
Oops.
Whoops.
You goofed. That's a goof.
Something tells me intern is at it again.
That was an oversight.
Yeah, and there was this similar vibe because of the recent Guild Tower boondoggle, where a lot of people were worried it was going to be fixed real soon, but no, it stayed there a while. I think it may even still be up, and they just said, screw it, it's a feature now.
I mean, some things are just not worth fixing. They already had to fix the ticket thing. They're probably looking at this going, I don't know how to do this. This is just going to take too long, and everyone's taking advantage of it anyway. Shrug. Yeah. Are there at least decent rewards for beating the stages themselves?
Not. I think it's just a standard.
Standard one-time reward.
Raid event like pool. Okay. Maybe with some crafting materials. Nothing too exceptional, basically.
Okay, well... Oof.
Well,
Oops.
Enjoy a free EP point size.
Pretty much.
And then there is another Dark Vision. Now let's move on to Arknights!
Okay! Another Dark Vision. Another Arknights time. Another time. Okay. I understand you wanting to get away from that as quickly as possible. Let's go into Arknights.
I miss Raid boss survival rush so much.
So you've said.
They did it once and it was awesome, and I'll never let them forget. But I want this back. If only because the music theme in this mode is awesome too.
Oh, that's a good point, and actually brings us to Arknights. So, our first full story event since Code of Brawl. We've had a lot of vignette events, and Children of Ursus, while also technically a vignette event, had a really good story, but that was a lot more interconnected than most are. This is the full-on with a start, middle, and end since Code of Brawl, which was like 6 months ago. And boy, how did they come out swinging. Twilight of Wollumonde is awesome.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the story is really rich, the characterization is solid, and we actually... A lot of the early events and early chapters in Arknights had a problem with to be continued-itis, where they kept throwing foreshadowing out for the sake of foreshadowing.
So like World of Visions then?
I'm going to assume so. I'm not familiar with World of Vision's story, but yeah, they would throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks for no good reason. But this time we actually have the payoff of some of that.
Yeah, and story writer, it's fine if you give something payoffs every now and then.
It really
it's
is.
Trying to resolve things. Please do. It feels nice.
So, once upon a time, there was the great hero we all deserve and love, Big Bob. And Big Bob wanted to get the heck out of the fighting game and wanted to just move to Colombia, aka the US, buy a farm for him and his troops, start making beer. That was his dream.
I relate to Big Bob on an emotional level.
So does everyone else. And the best part about it is he accomplishes this dream over the course of the finale of the event, Grani and the Knight's Treasure.
He gets his happy ending?
He gets his happy ending. To the point where he actually has made cameos as totally a neutral figure or a good guy figure in succeeding events. He showed up randomly in Obsidian Festival. He showed up during the New Year event, just having a party with his friends. You get to fight him again. But the very last...
For confirmation and context.
Yes.
As a reminder, Big Bob originally, before these events and so like, was basically a generic early boss number lambda.
Not really.
Okay.
He was actually our
right
first...
from the start, he was a bit special.
Oh, yeah, no, he was our first heavy anything.
Okay.
Like, before Defense Crushers, before anything else, there was Big Bob and his big honkin' chainsaw that could one-shot just about everybody, including several of your tanks.
In the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Was Big Bob.
In the beginning was Big Bob. He was our very first unique event boss, and boy howdy did he stick to mind.
Yes,
Now,
he did.
At the very end of that event, one of the to-be-continueds is him writing a letter from his new farmhouse in Colombia to this other character on his squad named Mudrock.
Yeah.
And we get a brief glimpse of Mudrock, and Mudrock is this big armored thing, very similar to Big Bob in that regard. Skip ahead nearly a year, and we get to Twilight of Wollumonde. And who is the final boss of Twilight of Wollumonde? Mudrock. It finally came back around. And Mudrock is actually a boss more or less by accident because she had nothing to do with anything that happened. She just got dragged into it as like, well, if we're gonna fight, let's raise heck. And boy, did they do so in the last section. Basically, you have a murder mystery, which starts riots, which go into whole, like, class inequality stuff. It turns into this whole real look at what happens when you have people disenfranchised and blamed for stuff that isn't on them. And their response to that, and at first, Mudrock is like, I'm staying out of this. Our people died in this incident too. I just want to get some supplies and get the heck out of here. And eventually the rioting gets so bad that Mudrock is like, you know what? I'm for a reunion. I'm done with this. Viva la revolution! And starts causing some mayhem because that's literally the only option left to her at the time.
Sounds like a Jackie Chan movie premise to me. Please leave me alone. I want nothing to do with it. Okay, I'll guess I'll... everything.
Okay. Okay. Sure. In the end, Mudrock is defeated, not killed. She finally sounds a retreat and is like, alright, enough of this. I'm done. I'm not putting my people's lives at risk. We're done here. I'm not even reunion right now. Like, can we please chill out? And eventually, the riot is stopped. Everyone kind of looks like a jerk in this except Rhodes Island, which is actually kind of the best Rhodes Island has looked overall throughout this mess for the most part, throughout the story.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Mudrock gets to leave and stay alive, which is kind of important because, hey, guess who they just announced as recruitable in Hong Kong? Oh yeah, Mudrock.
Yeah.
She will eventually actually join Rhodes Island, and that is wonderful.
In that trailer with this amazing music.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so the story of it's actually really solid and twisty, which I like. I've always been a sucker for a good murder mystery. It also shows a lot of character growth. Oftentimes in these events, it focuses almost exclusively on new characters, But this one actually has a second unit of people headed up by Greythroat, who was actually a pretty major character in Chapter 6 of the main story. And by the time we get to Twilight of Wollumonde, she's really pulled up her big girl pants and is now really a solid team leader. And she really impressed me about how far she's come.
The two other people on her squad are newer people.
Yes, they are new.
She is recurring from in the story already.
Correct. The only characters who are recurring were Mudrock and Greythroat herself. And that leads us to the actual stages, which were actually really cool. This one did something that no other Arknight stage of any kind has done, and that is territory control.
Yeah, I've been on your stream. It seems like they've added some mechanic with essentially neutral towers. You can win or lose.
Correct. And those towers are actually super cool because they're the only things I've ever seen in the game that actually hit for percentage hit points instead of fixed damage.
Oh, wow.
Which actually means they're kind of the only way to beat certain enemies reliably, including Mudrock herself.
Yeah, because she's so heavy.
Exactly. If you're dealing with something with tens of thousands of hit points, and the best any of your people could do is like 800, yeah, something that hits for 5% health every attack is actually going to be pretty gigantic.
Pretty much.
Now that I think of it, I think the biggest failing of Mudrock is that she's not named Bigger Bob.
I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will say one other thing that maybe people didn't notice necessarily about the towers is that they actually, not only do they hit enemies, and you can be the tower's enemy as well if the enemies take control of it, they also heal allies.
Yes.
So, again, if you're fighting something with tens of thousands of 10,000 hit points or whatever, well, turns out if it gets healed for, 10% of its hit points every 5 seconds, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah, that gets to a point where you're probably not going to beat that enemy unless it's the first tower that's taken. So it creates this whole territory control dynamic, which, at least in terms of my strategy, is the first time I actually found myself using fast redeploy as a real strat. Not for any sort of enemy abatement or anything else, because I tend to find their stats to be fairly low, but literally just to hack the towers quickly enough to take control of them. I kind of want to commission a piece of artwork of Gravel as a hacker.
See, I've used some fast redeploy strategies as well. I actually shared a video on the Discord about a strategy that totally revolved around fast redeploy on some of the stages that were in one of the previous events.
That video was like, the player was trying way too hard on that one. I appreciate the effort, but this just feels so unnecessary. It was effective, but my goodness, the amount of micromanagement you had to go through to make that work was kind of insane.
You're not wrong. It took some doing.
Yeah.
But I kind of just wanted to do it just to show off fast redeploy at that point.
Oh, I totally understand. For me, I've never liked
that simple features let you use elements that weren't there and truly make them shine like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the stage design. Another thing with the stages is you actually get our first tribulation mode. And this is a new kind of challenge mode where you don't get to pick the units. They give you a prefixed party.
Huh.
Oh, this gets better. So, we've been having kind of a mishmash right now, and mostly because we believe they're holding off the first anniversary for the first anniversary instead of accelerating it like our thing should have done. So we've had a couple of events early. We had Children of Ursus like 4 months early. We're having this one like 3 months early. But that comes with a bit of a caveat in that the fixed parties in Tribulation mode actually feature 2 characters who aren't out yet. The first is Phantom, who is the king of fast redeploy. And he actually is 2 characters in one, because not only do you deploy him, but he also has a clone that you can deploy with his exact same stats and skills on top of that.
Well, that sounds like something awesome to have as part of an early look preview.
Oh yeah, it's great. And he isn't even the crowning gem. I kind of wish I discovered this on my own. Unfortunately, I knew about it way in advance because people on the subreddit were actually kind of freaking out about this possibility, and it happened. The second new character is the second limited unit who is not out yet, my girl W. And I've talked about W quite a bit. She is a fire demon who brings the fire not with any sort of demon magic, but with a 40mm grenade launcher, sticky bombs, claymore mines, and all sorts of other explosive fun.
She brings the boom.
She brings the explosions. I have not actually gotten to this tribulation mode stage yet. I'm probably going to stream it on Wednesday, the 4th of November, so it's entirely possible by the time you're listening to this episode I will have already done so. But, yeah, the fact that she actually got an early preview is kind of humongous, because she is the absolute top of my want list, and I can't wait to try her out.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, she's really neat. I normally don't go for characters who just hit things really hard, but the way she does it has so much swagger, and also stuns enemies, which is some nice utility. There's something about her vibe that just makes me happy. And then, much like many other characters in the game, my first experience with her was of a boss fight, and it turns out in Arknights, the fastest way to my heart is to have a really cool boss fight. W did it, Big Bob did it, the Rat King did it, Mudrock did it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a solid recipe.
Yeah. If you prove...
Enemies to friends.
Yeah, enemies to friends. I like it. So I'm looking forward to trying out the Tribulation mode. I think that's going to be very, very cool. And I'm glad it exists, and I'm kind of glad it was early, because it gives us a preview of what we could be pulling later, which is not a terrible idea.
When you're able to kind of look at, the unit that you're, obviously, actually experience them. Now, obviously on the banners themselves, they say, okay, here's the unit skills and whatnot.
Right.
So you can look at them at their E2, which is their highest promotion form, right? You can see kind of the numbers that are there and what they do, but the ability to actually try them out, dude, that's something.
Which is why I
really
like
nice.
a lot this function in Genshin as well.
Yeah. It's the preview function is just a very nice function. And, Des was mentioning the written data. I've got to be honest, I've fairly consistently not gotten the full picture from written data twice now. Neon, the first
Angelina.
Yeah, Angelina was one of those cases, but that was also a case where I did try friend unit versions of Angelina and wasn't really thrilled, and even now I'm kind of falling off on her again just because she is kind of she's kind of wonky, especially on Annihilations, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's also Annihilations.
That's also Annihilations, yeah. Annihilations, you do not want active skills. As rarely as possible, you want active skills. Anyway, we're getting off topic. But there were two cases in particular where I just didn't get a picture of what it is they actually did just from reading about them. First is Neon, who I had in my head was just a utility tank, and had cool utility stuff she could do. No, turns out she's a Stonewall extraordinaire, and I just didn't get that at first. Because the way things are written, it doesn't factor in modifiers, and it doesn't factor in trust value. So I thought she was 100 defense points weaker than Hoshiguma. No, they're about even, and her modifiers are way better. So all of a sudden, you need something hard stopped. Neon's the one you use. The second time this happened was actually more recently with Rosa. There was no part of my understanding of her that made me think she would hit that hard. I just thought she was a stunner. I thought she was a stun bot. Nope, turns out she actually hits really hard and acts sort of like a true sniper is what I call them, like Firewatch and Ambriel. She just has different target priorities because she targets heavy units, like weight class heavy units. So it's very interesting, but her attack is actually much higher than I thought, and she became my first unit of any kind with a base unmodified numerical attack value over 1,000. Which is harder than I thought. And this actually brings us to our two banners over the course of this event. The first banner being Lily in the Valley. I don't understand why they title banners. That feels really weird to me, but that's what it's called. And that is Suzuran's banner. Now, Suzuran is a slow supporter like Angelina, but unlike Angelina, she can actually attack when her skills are down, which is nice. But as a result of that, her nuke isn't nearly what Angelina's is. You're using her entirely for the utility at that point. She does not have the damage that Angelina has at all.
Yeah, Angelina has higher attack too, so...
Yeah. So, Suzuran I don't actually know much about. I took one look at her art, and I'm like, no thank you. She looks way too young for me, let's say. And I got into a little trouble, because I complained about this a lot, though I was trying to set up a joke on stream when it happened. With that said, she is really...
I do like the fact that she has Fennec Fox ears.
Yeah, she's a Ninetail, as well.
Yep.
In for one tail, in for 9.
In for 9, yeah. I would prefer a full-grown Kyuubi, personally speaking, but whatever, you know. She's a very, very powerful little girl. If you really like very powerful little girls, go for it. I know there's a market for that. I hope you enjoy her. The second banner is the standard banner. This is actually more powerful than usual standard banner, which is why I'm bringing it up. It's Angelina, who we just mentioned, and Helagur. Angelina obviously is one of these general units who's good at just about every stage, with the notable caveat that she's not going to be doing a whole lot of attacking when her skill isn't up. So she's basically, her skill's going to be down, and then her skill goes up, and she's just going to lay down the nuke, almost as powerful as Asia at that point, which is really impressive. And then Helagur, I've mentioned before. He's a stand-in-the-corner, self-sustained, just wonderkind. He's fantastic. He's near the top of my want list. He's right under W. I really want the guy.
And hopefully you get him at some point.
I hopefully do. I know since Asia showed up on the shop for the standard banner 2 weeks ago, there's a chance that Helagur will make it there eventually as well, so at this point I may as well just save up for him that way. I did do up to bonus on a banner and whiffed. I think I got another fast redeploy. I don't really remember, but...
Helagur and Angelina's banner came out like today or something?
Came out Friday.
Okay, maybe I'm not remembering.
Yeah, new standard banners usually come out on Fridays. Now, Dez, you discovered something about Suzuran and other supporters like Angelina. Why don't you go ahead and share with the class?
It was more something that I just kind of thought of as we were talking. But yeah, I did end up getting Suzuran, and I was noticing after I got her to E2 just earlier today that some enemies were dying that hadn't been dying before, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the extra skill speed increase that she gets. So, you know, that increases the number of targets that she attacks on the skill that I have her on currently, which is her skill 2. But she increases supporters' skill speed charge time by 40%, right? So not the time that it takes, but she increases the amount that they charge over time, right? So 40% faster would mean actually Suzuran and Angelina would have a lot of synergy in that way, because Angelina is all about the uptime on her skill,
right?
Which means that if Suzuran's increasing the charge time, or the charge speed rather, on that by 40%, that's a lot of extra uptime.
Right. Which kind of brings me back to my point about Suzuran, is she'll never do as much as Angelina in terms of raw damage, but my understanding is she's a pretty solid utility player. For real this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And not only does she kind of provide that, utility with the charge time, she also has her third skill, which increases the damage that anything in it takes, as well as constantly slowing all units in her area, in her her range, increasing the range and healing all allied units within that range by, I think the maximum is like 20% of her attack per second,
which is pretty gigantic. Now, is that considered a direct heal or a passive regen?
I don't know yet, but knowing how other heals in the game that are similar to that count, I'm guessing it's probably going to be a regen.
So we could test that with Helagur. Or with Utage.
Right, or Vulcan, or, anybody like that doesn't allow heals from allies normally, but if they're in range, then it would count, right?
Okay.
I'm guessing it's going to be the same way as, again, I haven't tested it yet. I can test it as we're doing the podcast maybe and let you guys know, but I'm guessing it's going to be the same way as Sora's region works,
that's
which
kind
would
of
work
no
on
joke.
like Helagur and somebody like that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I truly and honestly love about Arknights. There's all these like weird combinations of units you wouldn't think make a great team, or weird ways to use units. Like, I actually asked, there's this character named Ak, and Ak is primarily a buffer. But he has a skill 1 that's actually kind of pretty good for damage, and it actually makes him optimal for attempts on Mudrock's boss stage as a damager. So I actually asked my friends for skill 1 Ak, as opposed to someone you would normally use in that position like Exvius. Which was very, like, again, it's just one of these things, using characters in new, weird, and fun ways, and it just ends up really working out, and I love it about this game.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like, the different number of, ways you can put different teams together. I've seen multiple different strats for everything from, basic levels all the way up to, obviously, the contingency contracts and what happens there. You can put together a team of practically anybody, and you can make them work.
Yep. So yeah, that's about it for Arknights. I would like to talk about one thing that happened in China that kind of blows the doors wide open on terms of who can be recruited. And that is, we're getting our first simulated unit. So once upon a time, there was a really bad movie made around Lunar New Year, written by Lava, and being hijacked by the diva that is Neon. And in that movie, Lava cast herself as this gothy, dark, sexy superhero. To my incredible shock, who's getting an event and a playable, like, second version of themselves, but the sexy, dark, gothy superhero Lava?
All right, I'm listening.
Yeah, we don't know anything about her yet. This was just the 18-month anniversary stream where we discovered this. But they made it very clear that, yes, Lava was going to be, like, the normal Lava is a 3-star, basically free unit you can get from recruitment. She's kind of a nothing.
Yeah,
okay.
if you've been playing the game for any period of time, you're going to have Lava maxed out as long as you've been, doing your recruitments.
Yeah.
You will have gotten her.
Yeah, she's ridiculously common.
Does explain why it wouldn't make as much sense to have it as just a costume.
I mean, it would have made plenty of sense to have it as just a costume, because I thought that's what it was. No, turns out they're actually putting her in as a separate unit. We don't know her rarity yet, but we're going to assume 6 stars, because it was kind of the star of the show. And I have no idea what to expect. So this is going to kind of blow the doors wide open of what-if scenarios in terms of hiring people. I don't know how this is actually going to work in terms of the game itself. I'm very interested to see how that works, but this is actually almost more interesting to me than the 3rd limited banner and anything else going on, just because the possibilities of who you could put on your team are kind of ginormous now. Because, well, if you're willing to put one simulation in the game, somehow, I don't understand what that's going to mean at all. And it is being treated as 2 separate units, so I don't know if there's some variation where you can have Lava and Superhero Lava on the same team or whatever. Like, I don't know how any of this is going to work. It's just so fascinating to me that this is a thing that exists.
We'll find out.
We will find out.
I did just do the test.
Okay.
Right, for Suzuran and healing units who normally can't be healed by allies.
Okay.
And she can. So I did it with Vulcan, who is obviously a tank that normally can't be killed by allies.
Right.
And she was definitely getting regen from Suzuran's skill. Also, that skill is a massive slow. Good lord.
Again, all of the utility, all of the utility, all of the utility.
Pretty much.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, that's the answer to the question that we had, and it does work.
Well, there we have it. All right, and with that, I don't want to take too much time focusing on Hong Kong. Twilight of Wollumonde, cool event, good banners, especially if you like utility players. And I guess that's a good time as any to move on to Genshin.
Let's do it.
Genshin Impact. And I'm going to start by talking about Pokemon.
Explain?
Now, stay with me on this. So, when you start picking up for a Pokemon what kind of attacks they have, because you only have a limited amount of move, and when you learn a new one, it replaces an old one.
Right.
I've seen basically 3 stages players tend to go through. And they don't necessarily go through all of these stages, but in any case, at the very beginning, you have somebody that goes, yes, this is my Charizard, he's a fire dragon, so he's going to have Amber, and oh, there's Flamethrower, he can have that instead of that useless Growl debuff move, and then he has 2 ways to speed fire, and then he has 3 ways to speed fire. But ultimately, all this Pokemon does is speed fire in different ways, and you only use one at a time anyway. Then, you have the next step, which is when a player realizes, maybe if my Pokemon has more elemental coverage, so I'm going to take this psychic Pokemon, and I'm going to give them elemental punches that lets them deal damage to more than just one type effectively. And so you have this coverage this way. That's stage 2. And then you have stage 3, which is, I really only need to use one single specialized damage move, and the rest can be used in order to optimize this or to reply to niche situations. And I can give a bigger spot to things like buffing moves, and actually make the kit essentially work to specialize the Pokemon in a role that multiplies by a lot its effectiveness.
Okay.
Okay.
I bring that up because Genshin Impact party selection is a lot like that, I think. Where on stage 1, you want just to put up all of your best units, all of the 5 stars you pulled, and everything, regardless of who they are. And if you have all fire units, well, no problem, it's what you want anyway. And of course, the moment you meet an enemy with a fire shield, you have a problem.
Right.
Then you have the second stage. I'm going to put different units, and I'm going to exploit the elemental interactions. And that's much better already. You don't have so many roadblocks, but you can still only use one unit at a time. Which is when the third stage comes through. And you actually take the whole party as a walking unit into consideration in order to build your party. And that's what I wanted to bring up. Notions regarding party composition in Genshin Impact.
Okay.
That's important because that's relevant to the newest unit I'm going to talk about next. But for now, generic notions of party composition. I think, and I've seen others agree with that sentiment, that basically you have 3 main types of unit you want in your party. You have first your frontliner, which is the unit you want to use most of the time, the unit you using basic attacks with a lot, the unit you buffing towards, and the one that does most of the brunt work.
So these would be the big hitters, like the main character, like Xiangling, like...
Not the main character, and not Xiangling at all, actually.
Really?
But you can build... Well, Xiangling is particular because, of course, these rules aren't strictly enforced, and Xiangling is great because she works both as a main frontline unit and can transition easily into a more utility-based role. But for instance, Diluc is absolutely a frontline. When he's in front, he does all of the work, and when he's in the back, he does nothing. So he needs to be in the front to be effective.
Okay, I think I see what you mean now. All right.
Yeah, because you can only have one unit in the forefront at the time. And keep in mind, these considerations are for solo play. Things like Spiral Abyss and all of that. In multiplayers, the roles are a bit different. Crowd controls take more of importance and likes. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Right.
So you have these front lines, and then you have the assist character. Or offensive support, but I like the assist term because it's kind of like in these team fighting games, like your Marvel vs. Capcoms, where you can call one of the characters that's not currently active, and it just comes up, does an attack, and moves away. That's basically what you want to do with a good assist character. Briefly come, deploy as much of their kit as is relevant, and then return to your front line, because your front line is the one you want out. Meaning that the good assist characters are the ones with either an effect, an attack that's going to last for a while, even when they're away, like, say, Fischl or Xiangling with Guoba and Twirling Spear staying for a while around you, even when you're not having Xiangling active anymore.
Okay, I think I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And of course, that means that your front line, now on top of their effectiveness as a front line, also has a big fire spear turning around them.
Yeah.
It can also count for units that debuff the enemies, for instance. Like, a lot of Anemo characters have a way to inflict elemental debuffs, and that would certainly count.
Right.
Another way is just units that use their skills that have a cooldown to burst quickly and then can get out. Something like like Anemo main character, in fact, which can just come out, use Windblade, use Tornado, and they've done most of the work they can do.
Okay.
So yeah, these are your assists, and I think that's one of the most important roles, and something that's very important to identify to make the most out of all of 4 of your characters and not just the one. And then lastly, you have the more defensive supports, which are mostly healers like Barbara and Noah.
Right.
Of course, this puts some characters in an interesting perspective as well, such as Jean, which does all 3 roles better than most.
Yeah, that sounds about like.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because party composition is important and can help a lot when you're not having enough resources to spend on literally everybody.
Oh,
so
yeah.
having a couple of characters, especially support characters, can help you rotate a lot things in your party while maintaining a strong effectiveness. Given that the entire world levels, that's pretty important.
Right.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten to the point where I have 3 characters. It took a lot of grinding to get there, I'll tell you that. But I have 3 characters at level, I think it was level 80. Anyway, the maximum current level for where my world is right now, right?
80.
Then, yeah, like I said, I was pretty sure it was 80. But yeah, I have 3 characters up to that level, right? And they're people that, I use pretty often. But for that 4th slot, I'll pop somebody else in if I know I'm going to need, I'm going to need a certain elemental, reaction. I'll pop somebody else in, or Also, if I am like, well, I would kind of like to maybe have a couple of this particular element in my party for the elemental bonus that they give, right? Sometimes
Yeah,
I
exactly,
pay
and that's
attention to
something
that.
that's probably going to be much more important eventually.
I would
to
assume
have,
so.
say, a party that has 2 fire characters and 2 lightning characters.
Yeah. And obviously when I'm putting those other people in, I'll consider, okay, are they going to need, many levels to get them in there? Because at this point I don't have really the resources to give levels to anybody right now. Like I'm flat broke.
Yeah.
on experience, primarily, and experience and ascension materials. Those I'm flat broke on those. Mora's fine.
Yeah.
Flat broke on ascension materials and the XP. So
That's why to spend your resin.
Yeah, no, that. Trust me, there's plenty of ways to spend resin. I'm definitely running up against that problem.
Oh yes, there is.
But yeah, so I always kind of try to decide, okay, who do I want to get in here based on, whether or not they're going to be able to have something that's going to persist.
Yeah, and like
beyond
you said,
when
you
they're going
have
to be there.
Yeah, like you said, you have 3 main characters and then 1 more flexible slot, and I think that's enough. I think if you're going to face a fire shield guy, you don't need 4 water characters, you just need the 1.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also helps that the shields tend to react based on number of hits and not strict HP, so even an under-leveled unit can help with that.
Yeah, especially, that's one thing that I've found too. Like my Barbara, I'll be honest, my Barbara is like level 50 right now, and I just haven't had the resources to get her up any higher, but against fire enemies, she does a lot of work. She'll destroy that shield really fast because water annihilates fire shields.
Yep. And all of her attack are water.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, party composition is important both for the moment-to-moment gameplay and for resource allocation, which is getting, as the adventure level increases, a more and more important consideration.
Right.
My Mondays and Thursdays are pretty much dedicated already to specific resource farms.
Sounds like it's either going to be talent stuff or weapons.
Yeah, that's the next step, because they were both on the same way, and the talent I needed to final reach, which I've landed on at last, level 6 on every talent for my Klee, which is the units we're going to talk about.
Let's hear about her.
Let's talk about her.
So, remember earlier in Arknights where we talked about diminutive characters and explosions? Well, Klee is a little girl that has a lot of bombs.
She brings the bomb, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So her main attack is bombs. Her E is a bomb that makes many smaller bombs. And her E being her elemental skill. Since people play on pad as well, or on phone, bless your pure soul.
Oh lord.
And her elemental burst is not directly a bomb, it's more of a series of rapid firing orbital lasers.
That do AoE explosions, so they're kind of bombs anyway.
Exactly. So yeah, she's all about those bombs. She is a fire catalyst user. So fire mage, with a bit of a short range, because she actually has projectiles that has travel time, unlike most mages.
Travel time and ballistic trajectory.
Yep. Which means that you have to take into account things like elevation.
Mm-hmm.
which can lead to silly situations where if you want to hit from a safer spot, you might want to take out your Geo main character to have that little rock she can be perched on, and then use her charged attack from a bit of a distance, because her charged attack is also an important part of her kit.
Oh,
But it
absolutely.
has no range, because it basically appears above her, which means it's about that chest size for most characters, and it fires in a diagonal direction.
Down.
And so if she's on the ground, it fires right in front of her. If she's way above, it can be pretty long range. So the way she works basically is that, well, first things first, she is a damage dealer.
All the fire
Very
all
much.
the time.
Yeah, and she's a frontline damage dealer, no less.
All right. So that means you have
because
2 fire elements, 6-star or 5-star frontliners?
not only that, but she has a special property, which is that her attacks being explosives deal increased damage to the rock shields and constructs that claymores are good on. Which means that, yes, you guessed correctly, she fills the exact same party role to the letter as the look.
Yeah, that's kind of where I thought this conversation was going. That's interesting
Exactly.
interesting prioritization for character releases at that point, if they do the same
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, basically, as a PSA, if you are just okay regarding Klee and not mad and do not want her at all costs, and if you have a Diluc, don't go after Klee, because she fills a very similar role to him.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly the same. Like, let's be
Yes.
honest. Klee is all fire all the time. Diluc's pretty much all fire all the time. Like, he's gonna have fire skills up almost all the time.
And
So-
he imbues his sword with his elemental burst to deal only fire damage.
Yes.
Yeah, this sounds...
Yeah. Yeah, and like they work differently, but they fit the exact same role. So buyer beware, you generally, if you have a Diluc and you have a Klee, they're going to be redundant. No, as to how she works, she has some interesting ways to make her skills work. So, her main attack and her elemental skill have a chance to trigger a spark. The spark is a little floaty thing that lasts indefinitely around Klee, and you can only have one at a time.
Not quite indefinitely. I did notice that it does seem to go away after a while, but it lasts.
Okay.
It lasts a good bit.
Yeah. It should last so much that it's not a consideration when you're during a fight, or even
Right.
in between fights that are close together.
Pretty much.
And when you have this spark active, if you use your charge attack, it deals half 50% increased damage and doesn't cost any stamina.
Huh.
And yeah, so that is a way to have a big burst of knockback. It does root her in place a fair amount of time, but you can dash or jump cancel out of that in order to survive, because she's definitely a bit squishy too.
Okay.
Which
Yeah,
doesn't
she is.
help, which isn't helped by the fact that she must stay in pretty close range to hit her basic attacks and her charge attack,
Which is
a big part of her optimal damage.
which is kind of funny because her job is throwing bombs everywhere. You'd think they would actually have a little more range than that.
Yeah, the problem being, of course, that Klee have no sense of danger or anything like that.
Cool.
Which is her, and it's actually reflected
Kind of
in the
part of her
fact that
characterization, yeah.
yeah, and it plays into the gameplay where you don't have any sort of friendly fire, but if you're fighting anywhere where there's grass, you're going to catch fire and you're going to be on fire for the entire fight.
Pretty much.
So, and the chance to trigger a spark is high. It's 50% chance either on each individual basic attack or on each individual damage occurrence for your elemental skill. And the elemental skill in question, Jumpty Dumpty, deals damage 3 times in a row as it bounces forward, and you have 2 charges of it.
Okay.
And
I wouldn't-
if I had to, do you know if it triggers on the mines? I would guess it would, but
I don't think it does.
okay.
Also, something to keep in mind about the Jumpty Dumpty. So, the mines do add a fair amount of damage, especially if you have her at high constellations. Her constellations are pretty much all amazing, but they're also constellations on a 5-star base character. So, I won't go too deep into that.
Yeah.
Sounds fair.
But, so the little mines stay for a while, and if you use your 2 charges of your elemental skill in a row, you have a maximum number of mines you can have, and they're going to replace the old one, so they're going to explode immediately. So you'll want to space out, maybe steer the enemies so they rush into some of those mines, or you can put them down and switch to most animal characters, which can then draw enemies and the mines in the same spot.
Oh dear.
The only exception being Venti. It doesn't work with Venti somehow, but Animal Man character it works with. I believe Sucrose it works with very well. And yeah, you can add a lot of damage just by switching quickly and using as an assist an animal character to draw them in and make them explode some more in a fiery little spot of death.
I like it.
Yeah. And then you have the elemental burst, which is basically you have a large area that's invisible around her, and any enemy in this area are going to take a burst of these lasers that look like a charge attack. But they're completely passive and you can do anything except change characters, which is why she's a frontline and not an assist, because she needs
Pretty
to be on the field for her elemental burst to do anything. Unless she's a Constellation 4, at which point switching out during the elemental burst deals an enormous explosion, but that means pulling 5 of the same 5-star unit. So don't rely on that. Even if you guys took Rooks and wanted to go for Sucrose and instead got 3 Klees. That's still not 5.
Alright. I wish I had that sort of luck in that game.
Same. I'm still at not a single 5-star that wasn't guaranteed. But at least there are some guarantees, and now I have a 5-star unit in Klee, and I like her a lot. She's definitely not easy to apprehend at first, because her moves by themselves don't necessarily feel too good. She's very static when she attacks and when she uses her charge attack, but she can be tamed. You can learn to benefit from jump cancels and dash cancels, and to use her this way, dart around, do hit and runs. And yeah, she has layers to tame her, sort of. But yeah, that's clear, that's a lot of explosions, and that's a lot of damage, and seeing these big crit numbers feels pretty nice. Oh right, the crit! I didn't cover the crit. Because crits are important for her, not just for damage, even though damage is pretty cool,
Yeah.
but also when her charged attack, the one you can get for free with the spark, crits, she gives everybody in the party more energy, which is great if you assist characters, benefit strongly from an elemental burst, because you can charge the elemental burst, but they're not the active character. It's very good.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so of course that means that you need some pretty specific selection of artifacts to make the most of her.
Right.
And she introduced me by her very existence to the depths of artifact hunting. And that's a whole thing. I don't think we're going to cover it this episode, but let's just say that getting the perfect artifacts you want is a task with a big T.
Yeah, I've been watching the not the subreddit. I've been watching the Discord about that, and yeah, I've heard some tales, and that'll be definitely something interesting to get into.
Agreed.
Yeah. But in short, if you have her and don't know exactly how to gear her, you want crit, and then you want pyro damage, and then attack or crit damage are all good.
Good
But
to know.
the short of it is damage, fire damage.
Basically.
So that's clear.
Yep.
Going from fire to water, we also had Mona's story quest.
Okay, I don't know who Mona is at all.
Sorry, I just saw Spacebird that just popped into the chat, heard damage, and said, must be talking about Klee.
Yep.
So anyway, Monastery Quest now. So it was pretty fun. They've got this system with keys you need to unlock specific story chapters, and they're releasing some of those between patches now, apparently.
Okay.
And it does provide a bit of a focused story and a way to test some characters you might not necessarily have, even if it's for the span of a single fight. But yeah, now we know a bit more about what Mona's deal is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pretty fun story where she had some very personal role for the Traveler, because basically the way she introduces herself to him is, I know you're not from this dimension, I can help you figure out what's going to happen, but you're going to help me first. Because she's an astrologian, and she knows that our stars don't correspond to this world's constellations and stuff.
Oops. Everything's all fun and games until you tick off your Rianger, apparently.
Pretty much. And she does have a little bit of an issue with practical purposes, like money. And then, of course, our character, realizing that, decides to be terrible towards her and eat the entirety of her profit for fun. To be fair, that was probably
I don't think technically the character realized that at the time.
Paimon definitely did, though.
Maybe Paimon did.
Yeah.
But Paimon's Paimon.
Exactly, and Paimon is evil. And is the big bad of the game, calling it right now.
Interesting
You're not
take.
the first person that I have heard say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now then. So yeah, it's a fun little story. It leads to some nice part, including the fact that we finally know what this water seal in this random house in Mondstadt is for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember we couldn't get into that.
Correct.
Well, now we know who can, and it's Mona.
Okay.
And
it's part of her story quest where she opens it up.
Yeah. And she finally meets the one she wanted to meet, and the main purpose for this quest, which is her arch-rival. I'm not going to say who it is, but I'm glad that there was a tiny visual detail that allowed me to identify before we had the reveal. Because constellations are both a system in the game and something in the lore. So it came up that way, and that's a nice way to tie things up. Hey, these little story quests are very nice, and I hope we'll get more of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would be cool with that from what I'm hearing. Sounds great.
Yeah. And it's also not going to be the end of what we hear about Mona, because we've had a 1.1 preview stream.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a trailer that I just linked, and first of all, can I just say that I really like that trailer because it's visually punchy, shows that this is some nice story point. We know some of the characters that are going to get involved. The music is really cool.
Music's pretty
It
good.
kind of reminds me of the FF14 patch trailers in a smaller, condensed way.
Okay.
I can see that.
And yeah, that's something that really shows things that get me excited for what's coming next. Even if it's just a story that's going to be one of the undone for most of it. And like, the story isn't uninteresting, and given that they're going from region to region, while there is an overarching plot, they can afford to actually resolve plot points.
Right.
So that's already pretty exciting. And so from the trailer announcement, on top of the story chapter, we also know we're going to get through the patch's history. I don't imagine they're going to release all of it right at the start. But we're going to get 2 new 5-star and 2 new 4-stars.
Okay.
The 2 new 5-star being Child, which will be a water bow user that can use some stun switching mechanics.
Yeah, I saw
act
it
as
looked
a
like he was at
melee
Melee
guy.
before he started talking about the bow and then started shooting things. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
And then he turned
Yeah.
back into a melee later in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just styles things using a bow and twin weapons and a pole arm, and it actually ties into the character even in his role in this part of the story, where he's going to do more than wield multiple weapon types. But that's kind of spoilery if you haven't done the main story quest at Adventurer level 29.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice. Then we have also Zhongli, which is the character already met in the story as well, that accompanies us for a while and whose voices I absolutely love.
That sounds like he's
Should-
Silverstein. It sounds like he's if that's the Geo Lancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing full Jugadan is what he's doing. Like he's using that exact
Exactly,
same
and it's
voice
great.
for Jugadan that he uses for here. So
Yeah, and I like it a lot.
it's a
Plus,
solid
he's
voice. He's a good actor.
a tall, cool guy that summons meteors, so what's not to like?
Yeah. No, I'm actually like that's a pretty cool. That looked like a really good like the first Geo moveset I actually thought like I could actually get into.
Yeah, I mean, he is the second spear user in the entire game.
All right.
And then we'll have also this tiny cat girl that's an ice healer as well. And this fire claymore user that has a rock and roll team.
Okay. Sure.
So, pretty exciting stuff in that regard. But as far as content to look forward to, there's also a lot of things both in the ways to get it and the rewards.
Okay.
So, regarding the ways to get it, there are 2 main things that were talked about during the stream. one being a longer sort of story event sort of things that will talk about Mona and Fischl. Which is why I've said that this isn't the last we'll see of Mona. And we know that from this event we're going to get Fischl for free. Which is amazing, because she is probably one of the best assist characters in the game.
I didn't get much of a chance to use her. Your missions and Mondstadt go faster thing kind of left her on permanent mission mode as a result. But,
yeah, I can see why. And even if you're just using her for that, it's neat too. But yeah, she is one of the best characters. Probably the best 4-star character in the game by a lot of people's judgment.
Yeah, if I get back into the game at some point, I definitely want to focus on her a little more. And then I had that water swordsman who just didn't sing to me at all. I'd maybe like to give him a shot.
Chill.
Sure. I don't remember his name. He wasn't really worth remembering. I'm sorry.
He does have rates up in Klee's banner too, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Yeah, because each character come with also... each 5-star banner has 3 4-star units as focus units.
Which does mean that as you're pulling, you're likely to max out a lot of, 3-star characters, especially if you have the resources to pull for a bit.
But
well, that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, Fischl for everyone is very good. And then... so we'll have that, and we'll also have the reputation farm.
Reputation farm?
Yeah, each area is going to have a reputation tracker.
Okay.
Which will increase from several parameters. Some are repeatable weekly quests. Some are permanent events, like unlocking teleporters and doing quests that spawn in the area. And as your reputation increases, you get rewards, including cosmetic things like name cards and gliders. You also get some more utility-based items, like the ability to summon a cooking pot anywhere, or the ability to summon a teleportation point anywhere that lasts for a week.
That lasts for a week? Wow. That's actually really cool. I like that.
It gets better. You also have the ability to get some compasses that work in the region you're working in the reputation for, that lets you do things like spot the nearest Geoculus or Animoculus or the statue upgrade item for this region.
Okay, that is awesome.
Even the nearest treasure chest in the region.
Okay, that's like the thing that I desperately wanted, so that's amazing. Okay.
Yes. And
apparently you're not the only one that wanted this.
I believe the way it works is that you get the item per se for doing the reputation, but it needs to be recharged with consumables you need to craft. So you can just spam your way into this, which does provide a bit more lasting utility to things like mining, since I've seen one of the crafting recipe has a crystal for getting these charges. And yeah, it's a lot of very useful quality of life like items and exciting stuff to get.
Sounds like. That sounds like one of the features this game actually really needed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way they just not giving it to us like that, but tying it to systems to make gameplay and lasting gameplay still very much engaging in things that aren't resin locked.
Yeah,
is very important.
That's actually the main thing I like about it. If they just handed it to you, it would probably make the game boring. But the way you described it, how balanced it sounds, I'd like to see how it is in practice. But
same.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah, almost forgot.
Hmm.
We'll also get an item that lets you use food as a quick slot instead of having to go into the menu.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
So-
Yep.
Which was probably one of my biggest complaints relating to the food system. So now I'm going to use food consistently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
They've really
an
managed
emergency, an actual emergency food as opposed to the meme emergency food.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
These are
that's a lot of
improvements the game
exciting
needed.
stuff. And it's going to come out next week as time of recording. If
November
it's the same as the Klee banner, that's also going to be this weird time between the banner and the next that comes. Because there was this couple of days.
Weird.
Yeah, there were this couple of days where the Venti banner and the corresponding weapon banner weren't active anymore, but the Klee banner and corresponding weapon banner weren't active yet. There was like 1 day and a half where you literally couldn't spend your summon crystals, your fate for the rare banners because there was no rare banner.
And the adrenaline
it was
junkies
only
wept.
on this. The only banner available was the standard headhunting banner, which obviously includes Jean
Exactly.
and Diluc and Mona, but it didn't have any limited time characters on there.
Yeah. So that was a bit weird, and I wonder if it's going to return as well, but we'll see.
We shall
We'll
see.
find out.
Oh yeah, and another thing that's I feel kind of important was something that was absent from the 1.1 announcement and subsequent discussion.
Okay.
No battle pass.
What?
At least none was mentioned. I don't think and we know that the current battle pass is going to end at the release of 1.1. So I wonder is either the reputation farm or the story event or something like that is going to replace the current battle pass as a progression system, and they're going to alternate that, or if they just didn't care to mention it but we're still going to get one. So that's intriguing.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. I wonder what's going to be up with that, because to talk a little bit about the Battle Pass, I believe, Des, you have finished it?
I have, yes,
Yeah.
and that's probably one of the
So
reasons
did I.
why I was able to get 3 characters up to level 80. Because it does have the extra, the rewards on it, right?
Right.
So I did purchase the Battle Pass. I figured it was a pretty good value since I did plan to continue playing the game. And it's I can't say I can complain about it.
Yeah, it is good value, but I felt like I didn't really want to make a purchase just for the enhancement items.
That's fair.
So that meant that the main sources of possible reasons to buy the premium track on the Battle Pass were the summon items and primo gems you get at the end, and the weapon. And the weapon, there are some pretty good choices. I think the Catalyst in particular is a great item for Klee, so that would be very good. But overall, I considered, is this worth 12 euros? And I thought, no for me. But
Which is fair.
for plenty of people, that's worth it. And overall, it's not that I don't want to buy any Battle Pass or anything. It's that I'm probably going to hold back for a premium track that has some cosmetics that I'm really going to like.
That's fair.
Something that lasts.
Yep.
Okay.
And lastly, since it's a new month, it's important to note that the shop has refreshed.
Okay.
which means your 3-star dupes are going to net you 10 summons, 5 from the temporary banner, 5 from the permanent normal banner, and that we also get some new units available to just straight up purchase with your 4-star dupe items.
Yep.
So there were Amber and Razor before, now it's Lisa and Bennett.
Okay.
Both of which are solid characters.
Yeah, Bennett being kind of a self-sustained, kind of support-ish character. I'm not exactly sure how well he slots into a party.
What's his weapon
and
class?
That's his best problem. Sorry?
What's his weapon class?
Light sword.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a light sword user.
And Lisa, which is a very solid unit, mostly an assist.
Yep.
I don't know. I could see Lisa being a frontliner,
Yeah, she can also work as a frontliner.
but
In
I would
particular,
agree
if
that
you-
probably her assist is stronger, especially with her Q and how it stays up.
Yeah, and it's great to create space for herself or for anybody else that needs the space.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it for Genshin Impact.
All right. Well, sorry to give you 2 leads in a row, but we better power through War of the Visions here. So, Rana, take it away.
No problem, powering through our divisions indeed. So the Halloween celebration is onto us. And they've released the same units that they released in the JP version of the game, which is one of the big advantages of not having as big of a power creep problem as FFBE has.
Okay.
It's just the units at the same power level and they work. So we have Rairyuu as a bit of a Frankenstein monster.
All right.
Instead of being a gun user here, he's more of a melee character with some strong tankiness. He just takes the blows and deals them back, with some good draining moves as well for the self-sustain.
All right.
And then we have Little Leela as some sort of a perky werewolf Arknights character guy. But as far as her job goes, she is basically the wind elemental version of Elira. So arithmetician with all of those height-based, level-based spells, except it's aerial spells and not water spells.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Aerial and not fire or dark for Halloween. Interesting.
Yeah, though that's probably because both Rairyuu and Little Leela in the default normal version are Dark Elemental. So they probably wanted to change things this way.
That does make sense. It just feels like, in that case, they may have been weird selection for Halloween, but whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, given that Little Leela is a character I quite like in the story, I'm just happy she has a 5-star base now.
That's fair.
Well, you are.
That's fair. I've stated something similar at FFBE several times.
Yep.
Yeah. But since the event itself isn't all that exceptional or anything, the only thing of note is that we have another porcelain tower.
Okay. And Porcelain Tower
Which
was
is
one of
pretty
those, like, fancy stage missions with the weapon reward?
Yeah. And regarding the weapon reward, well, it's not a weapon anymore. This time, the reward for reaching the top floor is a ring. But you can get also the sword from the last Porcelain Tower, as well as the upgrade materials from the coins you get throughout. So even if you don't reach the end, you can basically take more time to eventually get the weapon up to speed.
Okay.
Which is a nice option.
I like that.
Yeah, and they even have the weapon, and they don't let you buy one if you already have one.
That's actually pretty fair, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, since otherwise you'd be able to fuse them together, which is not what they want you to be able to.
Yeah, not intended. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's where the game is at its best, so... I didn't go that hard on it, though, mostly because I do have my natural limit of 2 gacha games I can juggle pretty naturally, and right now with Genshin that's 3 total, so World Division is falling a little bit on the wayside, and it has some kind of inherent problem with the fact that it's a tactical game with farmable battles.
Yeah.
And technical battles take longer than normal RPG battles.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is true.
Yeah. So there's limitations this way. Did you know Fire Emblem 7, the first that which our shores, the main story mode had 17 fates, not a single one more. That's enough to make a full game. And 17 fights is more than you are expected to farm in a single day in World Division.
Ah. Okay, now that you put that in perspective, yeah, okay. Yeesh.
Yeah.
I wonder how many tactics Ogre had. Sorry, that was a total
question.
non sequitur. Go on.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, like I'm kind of burning out on the game. I'm not full stop not playing it anymore or anything like that, but I'm just going on, getting the shards for the characters I have, doing the dailies to get a bit more visual, and that's my world vision for the day, pretty much.
Yeah. Sounds fair.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It seems like that game is a real attention hog.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep interested for long period of times at times, which naturally leads us to our topic of the day.
Yep. What keeps us interested? What keeps us interested in a gacha game? What holds our attention there after we're already hooked in?
Yeah.
For me,
Oh,
I'm gonna actually say the characters, and not necessarily in a are the summon characters cool sort of way. Like, I've been finding, especially with Arknights, I get really into like the backstories and the connections and stuff like that, and seeing how the puzzle pieces fit together. That actually has me hooked a lot more than I thought it would. And the more I examine it, the more I'm like, I don't necessarily want Mudrock for her kit. I have more than enough good tanks. I just want her because...
Yeah, but it's Mudrock.
Yeah, I want her because of how she fits into the story and how she connects to other characters. And just all sorts of other stuff like that. And it's one of those things. You know, I see a new character come out who was mentioned in someone else's background, and there's story potential there, and that has me interested. Another Chinese event has Neural's family show up, and they're 2 new characters as well, and I'm like, oh, that's also interesting. I don't know, there's something about the characterization and the backstory that keeps me interested more than anything else. Even if up until...
that story mode is pretty useful to care about the character and what the game has to offer.
Yeah, although up until the most recent 2 story-based events, like... the main plot of Arknights is not really, like, connected with me in any real way, so it's pretty much always been about the characters, and obviously there's things like... It's a combination of that and not being treated like a chump by the developers. Treat us with respect, and I'll be willing to keep going for quite a bit.
Yeah, it turns out that when you say it like that, I'm immediately thinking back to World Divisions.
Uh-oh.
And while they're releasing some good stuff, there's always a but.
Yeah.
And it just feels nice to not have to worry about a but.
Yeah. Like, in the, 10, 11 months? When did Arknights first come out? End of January?
Yeah, about that.
So in getting on 11 months of playing this game, 10 and a half months, let's say, in 10 and a half months, I have yet to feel like the developers are doing me wrong. I've yet to feel like something is misvalued. I have yet to feel like I'm being forced to do something. I have yet to feel like I'm being strangle-held or held back by the systems, which was my biggest complaint about Genshin and why I stopped playing that for a period of time to be determined. I haven't written that one off as never again like I did with Valkyrie, but
yeah,
like I'm still kind of like, I don't have a desire to play this.
Yeah, turns out you want to play the games more where they're not a source of anguish and stress.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, between like feeling like I'm being respected by the developers, and on top of that, just the nature of the game and the immersiveness of the world and how everything connects with each other, it's kept me hooked pretty good. And I think that's kind of a big thing about that.
Yeah, I can see that, for sure.
Thinking of what keeps me interested in the games I play, I'm starting to realize something by putting into comparison the FFB World Division games and Genshin.
Okay.
Well, honestly, and that's part of why we got this topic here in the first place, because I said that I wasn't sure what World Divisions could really do to reignite my interest in the game. And that's because the systems, the world, are kind of in a place, and sure, you can change the background, and the background artists in FFB in particular are spectacular, and but it still feels like similar part of the world and similar part of the story, especially since Season 3 story isn't something I really gel to, but the latest chapter have at least gone somewhere, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I compare that to Genshin, where I'm excited to see the world open up more and more, not just because of the story that's going to happen there, but because of the world elements itself. Like right now, we already know that for 1.2, there's this big mountain peak between Mondstadt and Liyue. That's currently just a piece of inaccessible decoration with very low-res texture when you get in a bit closer to it.
Yes, I recall.
But that's going to get fleshed out into an explorable zone, and I'm excited to put a foot in there and see what it can offer, what kind of puzzles I'll have to solve. And yeah, that's stuff to look forward to. And I think it's important to have, even not specifically regarding the world, having stuff to look forward to.
Yes.
That's another thing that keeps me interested, having this objective, this I want to save and prepare, maybe pre-farm upgrade items for this character that's going to come out eventually.
Yeah. On my front, I mean, gameplay is obviously always important. Like, if I'm not enjoying the gameplay anymore, I'm gonna drop the game. You know, I did play FFBE for a really long time, and then the gameplay just started to feel really repetitive and not really that interesting, right? To the point where I was like, yeah, I'm good stopping this. You know, it feels more like a chore in order to continue, you know, in air quotes, playing it, right, than it is to just drop it and say, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the gameplay not just to be good in an abstract way, but to allow for some fiddling, like you've said before, Galen, talking about Arknights and the way there was Ark that could be used in this very unique way, and having these kind of ways to have fun with the gameplay, seeing it expand in directions and having options you can discover, tinker with. I think that's important to have systems that accommodate from that. And unlike Valkyrie and Atomia, which were having very samey characters.
Valkyrie. The to-do list of how not to run a gacha.
But yeah, obviously gameplay is really important to me, and if that's not holding me, then that's going to be a big reason why I'm going to, end up stopping playing. I tried Sino Alice for a bit, right?
Yeah.
That gameplay, aside from the guild, like you can do once a day, I was like, yeah, this isn't really doing it for me. Nothing else really was interesting in the game. So I'd say as far as for me, that's kind of the biggest thing that's going to hold me in, is if it's got good gameplay, and not just good gameplay, but good gameplay that stays interesting.
Yeah, and that's another good point you've raised up talking about Sino Alice. The fact that for games such as Sino Alice and indeed World of Visions, one of the main drive for having optimized parties is PvP. While that's not necessarily the case for Genshin, because you have the co-op farm and you have the bosses, some of which are solo only. And I do dearly hope that the boss they hint at in the 1.1 trailer is going to be weekly farmable the same way the wolf and the dragon
I hope so
are.
Too. Of course, that does mean another way to use resin.
Yeah.
Lord, but the good thing is that they also give really good rewards. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm always happy to use my
use
resin on the wolf or Stormcare, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a fun fight. And a lot of the trial fights in FFVE are pretty fun too.
Yeah.
And having this payoff for having your units and your party that works and does the thing you want is also important, because it's no use to have this shiny new hammer if you don't have any nail.
Yeah.
Very true. One of the bigger content creators for Arknights apparently had the opposite reaction to me over arguably the stupidest possible thing. So, Tectone apparently just abandoned Arknights entirely for Genshin, is my understanding from the subreddit. And today...
my understanding from a video I saw.
Yeah, and today, today Geister is telling me one of the primary factors. So we didn't get a certain set of skins here in the States that we got in Hong Kong, which was a KFC crossover. Yes, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
We talked about that, I believe.
Yeah. My opinion of this was, shrug, that's international contracting for you, and KFC is a very different, corporate entity here than it is in Asia. It has a very different cultural place here than it is in Asia. So it doesn't really surprise me that we don't get those skins. Like, that never really was a bigger factor for me. Apparently that was a rage quit point for Tectone.
A boiling point because of other factors that built up before.
Yeah, I
think from what I derive from the video which I did watch, I think most of the issues were more in a community reaction-centric factor.
Which is also kind of weird, because I've been, on the Arknights subreddit for a few weeks now, and I haven't felt bad even once about the community. They seem way more civil than FFBE ever did, that's for sure.
To be fair, FFBE kind of has this culture of going with torches and pitchfork to get what we want.
True.
That's very fair, yeah.
And we probably wouldn't do it so much if we didn't need to do it so much and if it didn't work so much.
Also, you haven't needed to do it in a while, last I heard, unless you are holding out on me in the FFBE segments.
I think that the torches and pitchfork for the Guild Turtle Tower is why we haven't had the EP Ibara event fixed.
Fair enough, I guess. I don't know. I just, of all the things, admittedly I've had that boiling point before. There was one RPG I played that I just found myself hating more and more and more of. And then there was a bad guy that reminded me of one of the good guys in The Expanse, and that was just around when I'm like, you know what? This is just one straw too far. I have all these other problems, and now you're dissing The Expanse, however unintentionally. I love that show way too much to let you. I'm out.
To loop it back to the topic, though,
Yes.
I think something that is indeed a solid, reliable way to keep people, and a lot of people, interested in a gacha game for a long period of time is community interaction.
Yes.
Is places like the subreddits and the discords and the forums that build this relationship, and that's why having community management is so important for this game.
I would have quit. I would have quit FFBE long before I actually did if it weren't for Elytra and Lady Hero and other bastions of the community.
Yeah, I would have quit
Exactly.
FFBE a long time before I did if I weren't in, Discords and, chatting with other people that were playing the game.
And there's this sense of community that means that these mostly solo games suddenly has a social aspect, and you have a place to just say, hey, look, I did this amazing pool, and it's important to keep players engaged on more than just what the game has to offer itself, but what the game has to offer as an environment, and that's kind of why we met as well, after all.
I actually met both of you through various game communities, and that's a big part of my social interaction just in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that social aspect definitely does, come into play for sure. It's not necessarily something you think about as far as something you're going to say, well, this is something that makes me choose to stay in a game. But now that you mention it, Rana, that is definitely something that would come into play there. And if all things being equal, if I were in a game that I enjoyed exactly the same on my own, right? But I were in a community that were playing that game, then I would definitely stick around longer with that community than without.
Though, of course, it has this possibility for a bit of a perverse effect, and it's easy to feel trapped and think that if your interest dwindle in a game, you might lose the community at the same time. I figured that's Galen part of what made the decision to stop playing all of the games you were playing over a year ago now so agonizing at first.
it was. It's hard to lose that commonality. But I needed to do it, so I did it. But obviously my relationship with people in various communities now is a lot chillier than they used to be because we just don't have anything in common anymore.
Well, not anything that you've identified anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to be able to just come up to people you haven't met before and talk about the latest unit.
Yeah. And hey, it's one of the reasons I'm glad I get to do this show is now that I am kind of starting to play gachas in general again, however much more carefully than I used to, I actually, I get to gush about things I like, and I get to kvetch about things I don't in a fairly safe environment, which is nice.
Yeah. And on top of that, we're going to expand to other topics as well as we got to know each other, which is nice not only because it's nice to talk about those, but because there isn't this pressure that if you lose interest in this or that game, you're going to feel held hostage by the game in a way.
Which is also very nice, which is a downside of any gaming community, not just gachas for sure.
Yes.
Lord knows,
Being,
I know how tight the
sorry.
Halo community is just because I'm a Rooster Teeth fan. And Rooster Teeth went through a big shakeup a couple of weeks ago where two of their bigger personalities were revealed to have real, like, how do I put this into words? They were predators.
Yeah.
And it turned into a whole thing, and that thing is still going on, and to watch the community freak out like that was really hard. So I know how tightly knit these communities can get, and losing a common thread with a community can be real scary.
Very can. Point being, look forward to Music Arcade, our future video game music podcast, coming up hopefully this month.
Yep, hopefully we're going to finally start that at the end of this month. And I guess
That's right, I went there and blindsided you.
You did! I was not expecting to bring that up today. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the episode here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more of the games you love to hate. Have a good one, y'all.
Explosions!
Explosions!
Bye, guys. Have a good day. Or night, whatever it is where you are.